Mimi Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
As we continue our election coverage, we're joined by another Green Party candidate, Howie Hawkins, who is running for New York governor against Democrat Andrew Cuomo, Republican Rob Astorino, and the Libertarian candidate Michael McDermott. Hawkins is one of a number of Green candidates running for office across the country on Tuesday.
We welcome you to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. Talk about your platform. We were just speaking with the Green Party mayor of Richmond, California. There are Green Party candidates around the country.
Well, we call it a Green New Deal for New York. It involves 5 basic economic human rights that have been on the table since the mid-1930s. The Committee for Economic Security with Francis Perkins as chair, Roosevelt's 1944 State of the Union address calling for a second economic Bill of Rights. The Civil Rights Movement brought it up again between the March on Washington in 1963 for Jobs and Freedom and the Poor People's Campaign. And these are the rights to a useful job, a living wage, affordable housing, health care, and a good education. And then we call it the Green New Deal because the centerpiece of our program is to fight climate change by banning fracking and committing to 100% clean energy by 2030. And we think that addresses the problems we face in this state. We have the state with the most unequal distribution of income of any state in the United States. We have the most segregation by both race and class in housing and schools. And none of the 2 major party candidates are addressing these issues, and we think we have a program that does.
I wanted to turn back to the debate, the only, I think it was televised debate in the state. It took place last week, and our very own Juan Gonzalez, who is a reporter and columnist also with the New York Daily News, asked the opening question, and that went to incumbent Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo about the Moreland Commission.
You appointed a special panel, the Moreland Commission, to root out corruption in Albany. But you suddenly abolish your own panel less than a year ago, and less than a year later, and press accounts say your aides pressured its members to squash certain investigations. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara is now probing what happened. How do you respond to those who call this the darkest stain of your first term? And can you assure us tonight that your office never sought to interfere with the Moreland Commission or any Attorney General investigations prompted by it, or even the current federal probe?
Mr. Cuomo, you have 1 minute.
Yes, I can, and I thank you for bringing it up because there's been a lot of misinformation, and this is an opportunity to clear it up. 2 basic points. Number 1, we appointed a commission, and I said to the chairman of the commission, who happens to be the preeminent district attorney in the state of New York, in my opinion, happens to be a Republican, Chairman Fitzpatrick, you make all the decisions. Yes, people gave him advice. He had public hearings. My staff talked to him. Everyone's staff talked to him. But he has repeatedly said he made all the decisions independently. He's been saying that for months in numerous mediums. Second, there was no abrupt stopping. I wanted the commission to get a law passed. That's why I impaneled it. I said to the legislature, when you pass the law, the commission will go away. They passed the law. The law has an independent enforcement agent, redefined bribery, was applauded by all the DAs, and that's what we needed, was a new law so the DAs could actually prosecute, and that's what we produced.
That's Governor Cuomo in the statewide debate that was held. Juan Gonzalez questioning him, throwing out that first question on the Moreland Commission. Juan.
Yeah, it was interesting, the governor's response. Howie Hawkins, you also and the other candidates responded, but then also in the fracking question that came as well, you raised a similar problem to what is being alleged in the Moreland Commission cover-up, which is the governor's office attempt to squash some findings of a U.S. Geological Survey report on fracking. Could you expound on that and also what the governor said about the Moreland Commission?
Governor Cuomo is Nixonian in the way he covers up and dissembles. There was the Commission on Public Corruption, which there he was saying was independent, but when he shut it down, he said, it's mine, I created it, I can shut it down. And the next week he's saying it's independent. You know, which is it? There was an earlier Moreland Commission on Public Utilities that was written up in the New York Times yesterday. He tried to get that changed. He didn't like the results of this study, which said fracking could pollute the water through various infrastructure. So, you know, I think that signals what he's going to do, because he also said in the debate...
Well, he not only didn't like it, but according to the report in Capital New York website, his people directed them to change, pressured the federal scientists to change their findings.
Right, and that blows up his whole argument that he's waiting for the science to decide on fracking. And then on Common Core, on another thing, you know, he said, who, me? Common Core? I had nothing to do with it. When in fact, you know, he signed things with the National Governors Association, putting New York into that program, and appointed John King, who's been a very, the state education commissioner, who's been a very forceful advocate for that. So you can't trust what he says.
What is it like to run for statewide office as a Green Party candidate for people who are watching this around the country, and for people outside this country where more parties are involved in electoral politics?
And for you, who was a UPS driver in your regular life?
Well, frankly, it's a lot of fun, and we get to talk to a lot of people. I mean, I'm running with a group of people. We're a rainbow ticket. My running mate is African-American, teacher, union activist, Brian Jones. Our candidate for Attorney General, Ramon Jimenez, has been a people's lawyer in the South Bronx for 40 years. Our candidate for Comptroller, Teresa Portelli, has been a union member working with juvenile justice issues with CSEA for 40 years. And, you know, it's like running for a local election, because we can't afford all the broadcast advertising that Cuomo's got. Cuomo had 331 people give him $22 million. You know, that's not the 1%. That's a tiny fraction of the 1%. Our average donation is 1/100th of his, which is kind of a good metaphor. I'm candidate 99%, he's governor 1%. And so we talk to people, we get a really good reception. Of course, doing a grassroots campaign in the state with 19 million people is a real task. So we're stronger in some areas than other areas, but we're growing and getting stronger.
How do you get on the ballot?
We're on the ballot because I ran 4 years ago. I got over 50,000 votes. That gave us automatic ballot slots. So we just had a convention and nominated our slate. And then we were able to start campaigning back in the spring instead of doing a big petition over the summer, which we had to do before.
But so 4 years ago, you got about 1% of the vote, but now some of the polls are showing you close to 10% of support among registered voters. How do you explain this surge of support for your candidacy?
Well, partly we're better organized as a party, but mainly I think Andrew Cuomo's been my best campaign worker. He has pushed people away from him. On the schools, the teachers are angry because he's underfunding and he's imposing these high-stakes tests and the evaluations of teachers based on that. The public workers are upset with him. The parents are upset with this Common Core high-stakes testing regime across the board. Schools are underfunded. My city has lost a quarter of its teaching staff, and Cuomo's about to go into his 5th consecutive austerity budget. His budget director said don't expect any increases to all the agency directors when they submit their budgets. And then the fracking issue is huge. I think after the election, he's going to go with fracking. I think that's what all the signals say. And I'm the only candidate that's calling for a ban on fracking and a commitment to clean energy. So all those things is pushing people our way.
Cuomo even created a new party, or helped support the creation of a new party, the Women's Equality Party. And many people believe he's trying to do a counterweight to the Working Families Party, which ironically endorsed him, but he's really not seeking their support. Could you talk about the Women's Equality Party?
Well, it's a new wrapper for the old package. You open that wrapper and it's the same old Cuomo inside the box. In terms of women's equality, he said nothing about child care or paid family leave or raising the minimum wage. Most minimum wage workers are women. So his women's equality agenda doesn't address the problems, particularly of working class women. And then, you know, he's got other packages. He's on the independence line, but he's not independent of those 331 people that gave him $22 million. And the Working Families Party, just because he's got that wrapper, doesn't make him a champion of the working class. His whole term in office has been an attack on working people.
How do you get covered by the media? How much coverage do you get? And what advice do you give to other, not only Green Party, but third-party candidates around the country? You've run, what, almost 20 times now, but you haven't won.
I got 48% for a city council race a couple of years ago. We've come close. And, well, my advice is develop relationships with your local media. Keep feeding them information. Media, journalists, help them do their job. They like getting information. and just keep plugging away. I think we've done well. I think it's the strongest part of our campaign. Earned media, particularly upstate in the smaller markets, we've covered. When we show up, they want to cover us. I think we're interesting to them, and we're serious. We made breakthroughs in the city of New York. You know, New York Times, Daily News Post have covered us, haven't in the past. Newsday. When I ran 4 years ago, my name wasn't mentioned in those journals. So we're still working more on the network broadcast media, and but I think we're doing good. The problem is we can't compete with Cuomo's advertising, which, you know, just swamps the airwaves. And, you know, there's a, you know, the big party's got a big organization. We're still building ours at the grassroots, but we're growing.
I wanted to ask you one last thing about charter schools. I asked that question in the debate. You and the Libertarian candidate answered it, but the Republican and Democratic candidates, Astorino and Cuomo, basically avoided it and talked about other things rather than the question I'd asked.
Well, yeah, I did answer it, and I actually was thinking of articles you'd written a long time ago about, well, 4 years ago, 2010, about how the hedge fund investors in the charter schools are making money using tax credits and lending money to the schools, and you use Albany as an example. And I wished I had done what they'd done when we got the question on, are you going to serve 4 years? I basically said yes and didn't use my whole minute. What I should have done is then turn to our platform for civil rights and racial justice, because Cuomo was pointing the finger at Astorino for not complying with a court order on fair housing in Westchester. But Cuomo doesn't have a positive program. We do. We want a cabinet-level civil rights department to deal with the massive segregation we got in New York State. We want a new public housing program that can begin to desegregate with mixed income, scattered site housing, and then we got to address the criminal justice system. I mean, this governor's been very hard-hearted, very few clemencies, 3 for people already out of prison. We have tens of thousands of prisoners in for nonviolent drug offenses, and we need to get them out of prison and expunge their records so they can have access to jobs, housing, and employment. And, you know, the disparities in the criminal justice system are the worst segregation we've got.
We want to thank you very much for joining us, Howie Hawkins. Howie Hawkins is the Green Party candidate for New York governor, running against a Libertarian, a Republican, as well as the incumbent, Governor Cuomo. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. Speaking of elections, on Tuesday, Democracy Now! Will be doing a 5-hour broadcast, midterm election night. We'll be beginning at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. There are many stations that will be running it. You can also go to our website at democracynow.org. We'll be covering the ballots. We'll be covering the close races and the not-so-close races. We'll be covering midterm elections 2014.